Welcome to the Physician's Guide to Financial Wellness, the podcast dedicated to helping physicians in Michigan turn their professional success into financial success while enjoying life along the way. And now, here are your hosts, Andrew Mushbaugh and Trent DeBruin.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Physician's Guide to Financial Wellness. This is Andrew Mushbaugh, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Trent DeBruin. And the title may have given away too much already, but today we're going to walk through 7 tangible ways you can save over $7,000. And not every area we discuss will universally apply, but these are several areas we view as low-hanging fruit to take advantage of if they do apply. And no, there isn't going to be a free steak dinner pitch at the end.
Oh, come on. I thought every great financial presentation involves a free steak dinner.
Well, I guess almost every great one. So the 7 areas we'll go through are, number 1, opening a high-yield savings account for your emergency fund. Number 2, tax loss harvesting. Number 3, shopping your home and auto insurance coverage. Number 4, reviewing your health insurance plans and options for coverage. Number 5, revisiting your need and coverage for life and disability insurance. Number 6, rebalancing your investment portfolio. And 7, and lastly, optimizing credit card benefits. Alternatively, you could skip this entire podcast and just delete your Amazon account, and that'll easily save you over $7,000.
Oh, I'm sure both our wives would really appreciate that one. Although, what would you and I do without an endless stream of cardboard boxes to break down in the garage?
It would leave a gap for sure. So Trent, outside of deleting our Amazon accounts, why don't you start off with the first item of opening a high-yield savings account?
Sure, and this is arguably the lowest of the low-hanging fruit because it only takes a few minutes to open an account, and there's nothing else you need to do beyond that. And to give a little background, as we've discussed in other podcast episodes, we view your emergency fund as an important first step in the cash flow allocation process because it provides the peace of mind of being able to handle any unforeseen expenses that might come up, and also gives you the ability to take on more risk with how you allocate some of your other cash flow to earn a higher return on it over time. Everyone's going to have a different amount they want to keep in an emergency fund. The typical rule of thumb is somewhere around 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses. However, some people like having even more than that simply for the peace of mind benefit, so it really is unique to each person or couple. But regardless of how much you like to keep in cash, if you're using a traditional brick and mortar bank like Chase or Bank of America, you've likely noticed the interest you earn on your cash each month is pretty minimal, often a few dollars or less. With a checking account, you typically have money coming in from either your employment paycheck or your retirement paycheck, then you use the money to fund your lifestyle. So in that sense, a checking account tends to be more of a buffer to handle the monthly inflows and outflows, and you aren't really, or at least you shouldn't be, concerned about maximizing the money you earn on that cash. However, as I mentioned, beyond your basic checking account to cover monthly living expenses, most people have an emergency fund of cash, often a savings account, they don't touch that just sits there and earns the same minimal amount of interest. This is where a high-yield savings account comes into play. High-yield savings accounts are most commonly offered by online banks, such as Ally Bank or Marcus. And these online banks offer the same FDIC government protection as a traditional brick-and-mortar bank. However, they don't have a physical branch or ATM network where you can walk up and request actual cash. And because they have lower costs from not having to maintain a physical branch network, they're able to offer higher interest rates on the cash you hold with them. For example, looking at Ally Bank, where Andrew and I keep our emergency funds, the interest rate is now above 3% compared to 0.01% for a Chase savings account. As you can see, that's a pretty significant difference, and to quantify the impact in dollar terms, let's assume you have a $50,000 emergency fund in a savings account at Chase. Well, over the course of a year, you would earn a whopping $50 of interest on that money. On the other hand, if you had your savings account at Ally, based on the interest rate at the time of recording, you would earn $1,650 of interest on your money, or $1,600 more in your pocket each year for doing nothing. In terms of logistics, you can easily transfer to and from a traditional bank to an online savings account with only a 1 or 2 day lag. It's worth noting that with some online savings accounts, there are monthly transaction limits, but these are often 5 or more transactions per month, which shouldn't be an issue with an emergency fund. And one final note, what we're discussing here is one of the few bright spots of interest rates increasing as much as they have over the past year. In fact, some people who locked in their mortgage rate a few years ago now have cash that's earning a higher interest rate than what they're paying on their mortgage, which is pretty amazing. So the punchline here is that you can easily save or make anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 or more, depending on the size of your emergency fund, by opening up a high-yield savings account. Also, while we talk about your emergency fund specifically, this really applies to any money on hand that you're keeping in cash because you plan to use it within the next year or two, such as money being saved up for a down payment. You can simply sweep it into an online savings account and hold it there until you need to use it, all the while maximizing the interest you earn on it in the meantime.
Yeah, and Ally Bank is back to sending their favorite regular emails of 0.05% or 0.25% interest rate increases. But hey, better than it going the other way.
Absolutely.
So the next area we'll touch on is tax loss harvesting. And this isn't one that will be applicable to everyone, but if it is relevant based on your situation, it's another way to save over $1,000 on taxes with relatively little work, at least in terms of the time involved. Having said that, unlike an online savings account where it's both easy to take advantage of and doesn't have any complexity involved, tax loss harvesting does have several nuances involved, and you want to be aware of the specific rules before implementing this strategy. And stepping back, tax loss harvesting is only applicable for those with a taxable investment account, also referred to as an individual or joint brokerage account. This is another area we've discussed in other podcasts, but as a quick refresher, tax loss harvesting is selling an investment that is currently worth less than what you paid for it to capture a tax benefit. For example, if you bought an investment for $10,000 and now it's worth $5,000, you'd have a $5,000 of unrealized losses. So if you sold the investment, the unrealized loss becomes a realized loss. And at least for tax purposes, this means you'll have the potential to lower your tax bill for the calendar year. If that was the only investment activity you had in a year, you'd be able to deduct $3,000 from your taxable income. And the reason you can only deduct $3,000 versus the full $5,000 loss you realize is because there is an IRS cap on the amount of losses you can deduct in a given year, which is $3,000. Having said that, you don't lose the additional $2,000 of losses and can roll over that loss to future tax years to either offset future gains or deduct up to $3,000 against your taxable income. To quantify this in terms of the actual tax savings, and using our example, you'll simply take your federal and state tax rate times $3,000 to see what your tax savings would be. So if you're a physician in Michigan in the 32% federal tax bracket, that means you take 36.5%, the 32% federal tax rate plus the 4.25% state tax rate times $3,000 to calculate the tax savings of $1,095. So that's the tax benefit, and an easy way to save us some additional money during the inevitable periods where the stock or bond market is temporarily down, like we experienced in 2022, but the process doesn't stop there. We won't go into the weeds here, but the goal of tax loss harvesting is to capture the tax benefits of any temporary losses while also not missing out on the inevitable recovery of the stock and bond markets, which is why you reinvest the proceeds from the investment you sold, $5,000 in our example, into another investment. By doing this, you get the best of both worlds, tax savings and not missing out on investment returns.
Yeah, this kept us pretty busy in the spring of 2020 and last year as well. And given some of the complexities, it's worth repeating that we recommend consulting with a tax or financial professional before implementing this strategy. So moving back in the other direction toward easy implementation with minimal time requirement, the next item we'll touch on is revisiting your home and auto insurance coverage. We've used this analogy in the past, but your home and auto insurance is a lot like your cable bill, where the cost tends to creep up over time if you don't periodically check in and revisit your coverage, and you'll likely end up paying a lot more over time than you need to. Both cable companies and insurance companies tend to introduce subtle price increases over time, knowing that most people won't actually shop around their insurance coverage each year just to save that amount. However, over time, these small increases can really add up to the point where the potential annual cost savings can be $500 or more for the exact same coverage if you're open to switching insurance companies. Now, we should add in the caveat that you don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish with this. Like with most things in finance, you often get what you pay for, so you want to make sure you're always comparing apples to apples. For example, you wouldn't want to switch insurance carriers to save $500 in premiums, but then realize you aren't adequately covered from a liability or risk perspective. This is why we use an independent insurance agent to shop around home, auto, and umbrella insurance to several providers to get the most competitive rate for the same or better coverage. By doing this, you create a competitive situation between insurance carriers and tend to get the best price. But taking it a step further, the agent also provides a side-by-side comparison of the existing coverage relative to the proposed coverage, so you can see both the cost savings and the difference in coverage. In an ideal world, which is often the case if it's been several years since you reviewed your coverage, you're able to get both better coverage and a lower cost. The amount of money you save will be different for everyone based on your unique situation and insurance needs, but we've had clients save anywhere from a couple $100 a year to a couple $1,000 a year by doing this review, while also keeping the same coverage or even improving their coverage.
Yeah, but don't you think people enjoy overpaying for insurance, knowing they are funding those Progressive and Geico commercials?
I will say the Progressive commercials are pretty darn good.
Yeah, especially the Becoming Your Parents ones.
Yeah, well, those might hit a little too close to home.
Well, sticking with the insurance theme and similar to taxes, no one likes to pay more than they need to for insurance coverage. And the next area is one that applies to everyone, which is health insurance. While this applies to everyone, there is a very wide range in terms of potential savings due to how expensive health insurance coverage is.
All right, we're hitting a little too close to home again here.
You don't like paying $25,000 plus in premiums for private health insurance?
I can think of a couple other things I'd rather spend that money on.
Yeah, no, I hear you there. It really is hard to wrap your head around how expensive health insurance coverage can be, especially for anyone who's employed at a larger company and doesn't see the true cost when they're paying as little as $100 or $200 a month with good coverage. However, regardless of where in the range you fall between having to purchase private health insurance and having employer-provided insurance, you're typically left with several health insurance options to choose from. And given the confusion around health insurance and the jargon involved, looking at premiums, copays, deductible, out-of-pocket max, PPO, HMO, HSAs, FSAs, etc., people often don't know what the best option is for them. With health insurance, this is something you can change every year at open enrollment time based on your unique situation or life stage. And making changes can sometimes result in significant cost savings if you are strategic. So the exercise you'll want to go through is first looking at your life situation. Are you younger, single, and healthier? Or are you having a kid this year or next year? Or do you know if you have certain health insurance costs coming up in the future? By doing this, it allows you to at least have a rough idea where you can project out the potential healthcare expenses. From there, you want to look at the difference in premiums, what you pay each paycheck or month, between your health insurance plan options. For example, with a high deductible health plan, you may save $200 a month in premiums, or $2,400 per year, relative to the more expensive plan with better healthcare coverage, aka lower deductibles and lower out-of-pocket max. Well, if you expect to have minimal costs, or at least there's nothing you can foresee in the way of larger healthcare expenses, an easy way to save $2,400 would be to choose the cheaper health insurance coverage. On top of the savings and premiums, high deductible healthcare plans often have an additional benefit like a health savings account or flexible spending account, which offer tax benefits for contributing to them. And in particular, with the health savings account, it's more common than not that your employer will make a contribution on your behalf, like $500 or $1,000. So there can be even more overall savings between employer contributions towards your health savings account and the tax benefits of making contributions yourself, which you can use to reimburse yourself for any potential healthcare costs. And we've seen people save up to $5,000 or more through the combination of choosing the right health insurance plan and taking advantage of the benefits associated with the plan, like contributing to a health savings account and receiving an employer contribution. Having said that, there are times, like having a baby, where you know there will be a significant amount of healthcare expenses on the horizon. In years where you know there will be more expenses, you can follow the same exercise of calculating the break-even point, or the amount of healthcare expenses where you're actually better off paying more in monthly premiums for the better coverage. There's never one right or wrong answer, and it's really tied to your unique situation and preference. But the main takeaway is that by taking the extra time to review your insurance options relative to your expected needs, you have the potential to easily save thousands of dollars.
All right, well, let's quickly transition so I can get health insurance off my mind.
We're 1 year closer to Medicare at 65.
Yeah, thanks for the reminder. So moving on to a similarly exciting area of insurance, the next item we'll touch on is revisiting your life and disability insurance coverage relative to your need. And don't worry, this is the last insurance-related item. But starting from a high level, the purpose of life and disability insurance is to protect against a risk, i.e. a premature death or disability, for as long as you have the risk, while at the same time paying for the coverage in the most cost-effective way. And while this is fairly intuitive, it's worth reiterating that your risk, and therefore your need for life and disability insurance, decreases over time as you accumulate more assets, pay down debt, and move closer to financial independence. For example, a 35-year-old physician with 4 children and $200,000 saved up for retirement is going to have a much higher need today compared to 15 years from now. Continuing with this example, let's assume this person has a $3 million need for life insurance today. Well, there are several options in terms of how to protect against this risk. They could just buy a $3 million 30-year term life insurance policy that fully covers them until their projected financial independence age. However, that typically isn't the most cost-effective way to purchase the required life insurance. Knowing this person won't need $3 million of life insurance coverage every year for each of the next 30 years, a better approach would be to ladder multiple insurance policies. For example, they could buy $1 million of 30-year term life insurance, $1 million of 20-year term insurance, and $1 million of 10-year term insurance. By doing this, the amount of life insurance coverage automatically adjusts over time, in line with changing need, as policies gradually roll off, and this person would save on premiums along the way while still fully protecting the risk. So that's one strategy if you're buying life insurance on your own, but another scenario you may run into, at least for any employed physicians, is group life insurance. This can be the cheaper route when you're younger, although the coverage gets progressively more expensive as you age and the cost-benefit changes over time. Unlike individual term life insurance, at least level term insurance, where you pay the same amount each year for the duration of the policy. A common situation we run into is employed physicians who are approaching retirement and who still have group life insurance coverage from when they were younger. Oftentimes, these physicians no longer have the same or any insurance need compared to when they originally signed up for the coverage. However, the cost has increased as they've gotten older, and they're now paying anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 or more per year for life insurance coverage they no longer need. So this can be easy, low-hanging fruit to save a significant amount of money. And bigger picture, the point with reviewing your life insurance is that it's worth running the numbers to calculate your need, then ensuring you're paying for the needed coverage in the most cost-effective manner, and making adjustments if you aren't. Switching gears from life insurance and following the same logic, it's also worth reviewing your disability insurance need and coverage over time, especially with any individual disability insurance policies you have. By reviewing your need for disability insurance relative to the cost of coverage you're currently paying for, you can run the same cost-benefit analysis to decide whether or not you can drop any of your insurance policies to save money on premiums. And unlike life insurance, where you receive a lump sum payment if you pass away, with disability insurance, your policy only pays a monthly amount until a specific age, most often age 65 or 67. So if you're 62 years old and are financially independent but still working, an easy thing to do could be to just drop your coverage and keep more money in your pocket, knowing the potential benefit is relatively small relative to the cost. Again, there's no right or wrong answer here, and certain people are happy to pay for coverage beyond their calculated need because they value the peace of mind aspect of it. But we're proponents of saving money where you can, and our view is that if there isn't a need for insurance, why pay more than necessary for it?
All right, moving on from insurance, the next area we'll touch on is rebalancing your investments. And this is a longer-term strategy whose impact really adds up over time, but is less noticeable on a day-to-day or month-to-month basis, like some of the other strategies we touched on. Starting with a basic definition, rebalancing is the process of selling some of one investment and buying more of another investment to bring your overall investment allocation back closer to your target. Taking a step further, we'll focus on disciplined rebalancing, which means you are intentional with why and when you sell one investment to buy another investment. The why is the easier part and is based on the concept of buying low and selling high. In other words, the same investment or area of the stock market won't always perform the best over a 30-year investment time horizon. Inevitably, there will be periods where an investment relatively overperforms and periods where it relatively underperforms. And these periods can even be as long as 5 to 10 plus years. So the why is that you'd like to sell some of an investment after it's had a relatively better investment return, knowing that won't always be the case, and buy a different investment after it's had a relatively worse investment return, knowing it'll eventually flip and become the relatively better performer over a subsequent period of time. Unfortunately, no one knows the future, so you'll never be able to perfectly time the top or bottom for one investment relative to another, but you don't need to be perfect, or even close to perfect, to still reap the benefits of rebalancing over time. Which just leads us to the when part of rebalancing, and for starters, rebalancing of any kind is better than not rebalancing at all, but studies have shown there are better ways to rebalance. Again, we won't go into the weeds on this, but we elaborate on the various rebalancing strategies in episode 19, the other 20% of being a better investor. And to quantify this, studies have shown that by having some form of disciplined rebalancing, you can improve your investment performance by around 0.2% annually. On the surface, that may not seem like much, but putting it in dollar terms, rebalancing a $1 million portfolio over time can add $2,000 annually to your bottom line, which compounds over time. So the main takeaway here is that applying a form of disciplined rebalancing to your investment portfolio each year can save you or earn you many thousands of dollars over time.
All right, the last area we'll touch on is looking at ways to optimize or maximize your credit card benefits. And as you might expect, we won't dive into the specifics or any one silver bullet credit card, since there are plenty of blogs and people out there who solely focus on this and keep up with the various credit cards and which ones offer the best perks. But we'll talk about the main considerations and some easy ways you can maximize your credit card benefits with minimal work. And there are 4 main considerations. 1 is upfront bonus. 2 is accumulating ongoing rewards or points. 3 is annual fees. And 4 is redeeming points or rewards. Often one of the biggest benefits is the potential to receive a large front-end reward for signing up for a credit card, such as receiving 50,000 bonus points for signing up for a card and then spending $3,000 within the first 3 months. This is where you see people playing the game of continuing to open new credit cards over time and collecting the initial bonus points along the way. And if you're strategic, you can rotate from one card to the next without damaging your credit score. Having said that, you do need to know what you're doing and have a plan. And the logistics of this strategy can be somewhat of a pain, so we would encourage people to read up on it before going out and opening 5 new credit cards. The second area to look at with credit cards is the ongoing benefits different cards offer and mapping them to your personal spending patterns. For example, if you love to travel or go out to eat, there are some credit cards that offer double or triple rewards for each dollar you spend on travel or restaurants. Some credit cards also offer temporary or seasonal benefits, like 5% cash back this quarter for certain stores or certain spending categories. And other cards might be more generic with their reward program and simply offer a set percentage cash back on all purchases, like 1% or 1.5%. Now, getting triple rewards for travel or restaurants might be nice, but these higher rewards cards sometimes come at the cost of a higher annual fee, say $300 a year or $400 a year. This is where some number crunching comes into play, where you want to make sure that the cost of any annual fee is more than offset by the additional benefits provided by that card compared to other cards with a lower fee or no fee. And on that note, there are many no-fee credit card options that still offer nice annual rewards. So this leads us up to the last point on redeeming your points or rewards. This could be receiving cash back, redeeming points for travel like flights, hotels, or rental cars, or even converting points to miles of some other affiliate rewards programs. Typically, the least efficient use of points is to simply redeem them for cash back, because that's often just a one-to-one transaction where 1,000 points equals $10, for example. If, on the other hand, you convert or move your points to a travel partner, like Delta, for example, you may be able to get a more favorable exchange rate than one-to-one, where your 1,000 points now become more than 1,000 points at the travel partner. There are also certain companies like Chase that have features where you receive a 25% boost if you redeem your points for travel rather than redeeming them for cash. Sticking with our theme of no one size fits all, deciding on which credit card is best for you will depend on how you spend and how much work you're willing to do to optimize your points and bonuses. By reviewing the 4 considerations I just explained, you'll be able to maximize the benefits associated with your credit card spending.
And I guess point 5 should be paying off the credit cards, right?
Yeah, that'd be an important detail to add.
Well, that's everything that we wanted to cover today. And hopefully, as you can see, there are a lot of small things you can do that collectively add up to significant savings if you're willing to put in a little extra time and effort. So to give a quick recap of what we discussed today, number 1, consider opening a high-yield savings account to earn more interest on your cash than what traditional banks offer. By doing this, you can earn more than 3% interest on your cash, which is quote-unquote free money for minimal work involved. Number 2 is tax loss harvesting, which involves selling an investment that is temporarily worth less than what you paid for it to capture the tax benefit, while also reinvesting the proceeds into a similar investment. There are rules you'll need to be aware of, so you want to consult with a tax or financial professional before implementing. Number 3 is shopping your home and auto insurance coverage through multiple insurance companies. By doing this, you'll create a competitive situation and might be able to save on annual premiums for the same or potentially better insurance coverage. There's no cost to use an independent insurance agent, so we typically recommend working with one to help facilitate the process and minimize the amount of work on your end. Number 4 is reviewing your health insurance options each year during open enrollment. You want to go through the process of comparing your projected or expected healthcare needs relative to the costs of your coverage and the other health insurance plan options. When you do this, be sure to factor in other potential benefits of a cheaper health insurance plan, like any employer, HSA, or health savings account contributions, the tax benefits of your own HSA contributions, or any other flexible spending accounts. Number 5 is to periodically review your need for life and disability insurance relative to the annual premiums. With life insurance, it's worth considering a laddered approach where you buy various policies with different terms to match up with the declining need for coverage over time. For disability insurance, it follows the same logic, where as you get closer to financial independence, you may be able to drop some or all of your disability insurance coverage to save on annual premiums. Number 6, in shifting away from insurance, is to periodically rebalance your investments. While we prefer a disciplined tolerance band approach of setting certain predetermined thresholds for when to rebalance and then reviewing the accounts every 2 weeks, any disciplined form of rebalancing will be beneficial in the long term, and studies have shown this potential benefit to be around 0.2% annually. And lastly, number 7 is to maximize and optimize the benefits from credit cards by understanding the initial upfront bonus, the ongoing rewards, annual fees, and options for how to redeem your points or rewards. Well, thanks everyone for joining us for another episode of the show. You can find the show notes at the podcast page of our website, mdwmllc.com/podcast. And if you have any thoughts to share or questions you'd like to have answered, please feel free to shoot us an email at info@mdwmllc.com. Take care, everyone, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
Want even more ideas, tools, and resources on how to make smart financial decisions? Check out the resources section of MD Wealth Management's website at mdwmllc.com, where you'll find additional knowledge and insight from Michigan physicians, including a blog, ebook, and one-page guides. While there, you can also schedule a 15-minute conversation with Andrew and Trent to learn more about what it means to work with the firm and how they serve physicians. If you've enjoyed the content, please leave a review on iTunes and share with your friends and colleagues. Thanks so much for listening. Andrew Mushbaugh and Trent DeBruin are certified financial planners, principals, and co-founders of MD Wealth Management, a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Michigan. All opinions shared in the show are for general information and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and no guarantee of future returns. Please consult with your legal advisor, your tax advisor, or your financial advisor before making any decisions.